Welcome back to the black hole of real estate, where we are relaunching with a better format for you for 2023 and beyond. This is your host, Ron Wysokarski, and we're going to be talking about all things real estate, how they affect you as a consumer, as an investor, and as a realtor and a broker industry. Everybody's talking about inflation, interest rates, and how it's affecting the market, and what's going on with investors. Remote work is such a big thing these days. And as a realtor, I've got something for you too to help you out. And we're going to cover all that today on today's episode of the Black Hole of Real Estate. So first thing, interest rates, they are going to continue to change just a little bit over time. And, let's just suppose right now, early of 2023, we are in a 6.5%-ish range. It's interesting, when the run-up 2003 through 2006, the rates were 6-7% during that time. So it's really the same type of interest rate we experienced during that run-up. So being higher than they were in years past, last few years anyways, it's a little bit different for most buyers and people looking to refinance, but it's not the proverbial end of the world. And chances are, when the last three times there was really big interest rate spikes, like the one we experienced in 2022. Interestingly enough, about 18 months down the road, the rates are the same or actually lower. And what happens is people will purchase in these times of 5 and 6 and 7% interest rates and do one of two things: either refinance down the road to the more preferred rate that's lower, or a lot of people are selling those properties so they're not experiencing that interest rate for a super long time. It's the rare person that stays in a home for 10 or 20 or 30 years. So you could survive your way out of it because people just naturally move. So it may not be as big of a thing as most people are making it out to be. Now, inflation, I believe the government's taken steps to curb that. We'll see if the actions will actually play out. But in the real estate space, I'm not noticing that prices are coming down very much, if at all, in most areas. What I do see is that buyers are taking a little bit longer to make the purchasing decision. And so you would think, as days on market increase for most properties, that, maybe prices are going to come down. It's really not that, because the inventory is still super low. There's very few people looking to sell their homes because, the sellers are the new buyers. And if there's a number of people delaying purchases, unless there's a gigantic increase in the inventory, there's probably not going to be much softening of prices. Now, where prices will change is the person who has to sell. And let's suppose that you're moving out of town, out of state, you've had a death, divorce, and the baby, something like the normal things where people will move for that, where they have to sell. In order for them to sell, they may need to sell a little bit less than they would have liked last year, or maybe a little bit less than their neighbor. But I don't see capitulation where $300,000 homes are selling for $150,000. This isn't 2008. What I do see is, if it's a $300,000 home and they're taking $290,000 or $295,000 to get out from underneath it to move on, that's happening. Now, if that's the case, if you're a seller, every sale is going to hurt just a little bit, because it's going to lower the bar where we're used to it going up for the last several years. So for buyers, if you're going to buy in a dip, this is a really good year to do that, because rates are high and there's a little less demand, only because the urgency is lower. We don't see too many of the multiple offers, 100,000 over the list price these days. So that is an opportunity, if you're a buyer, an investor, to buy on a proverbial dip. It might offset the interest rate that you would experience, at least initially. Now, if you're a cash buyer, there's no interest rate conversation. You absolutely can purchase this year for the same or less than last year, and we have not been able to say that for years. So there is opportunity within the marketplace, even though interest rates and inflation are that scary thing out there, but it's not adding up to be as painful as most people think. Now, that doesn't mean that realtors are thriving right now. Some are, but the vast majority of agents are suffering right now. And if you think about it, it's been easy in the real estate space to sell property the last few years. And if you don't believe me, play a game with me. Let's just suppose that you went to, a jeweler or a car dealer or something like that, and they had something there that you're interested in, and like, hey, we got 10 other people interested in this over here, so our price is $10,000. What do you want to offer? And she said, well, geez, I don't know. How about 12? Let me give you 12,000. Matter of fact, we don't even need to inspect it or take a look at it to make sure it's a diamond or the car runs good. We're not even going to lift up the hood. We're just going to take it and, and we'll close on any terms that you want. No problem. You see, that's not happening in those type of businesses too much, right? Maybe in the car industry for a minute, paying over the sticker. Maybe we experience some of it. But in most of modern history, people don't pay more than the list price and give up all their liberties and all their inspections. So if you're an agent in this market, the skill that it takes to get buyer and seller to agree on a price and get a buyer to actually sign the offer, it wasn't too hard, because the buyers are like, look, I don't need anything but to get that house. It was never easier to get somebody to sign an offer that could turn into a contract as an agent. So skills eroded. It went out the window. Not because they didn't know how to do that. They didn't practice it. If you don't exercise a muscle, it doesn't stay a muscle. It kind of gets, a little soft. And I think that's what happened in this industry. And for a lot of agents, it's hard to restart the wheel. Now, if somebody sold, let's say 10 or 20 homes in 2021, and they sold, half of that, 5 or 10 in 22, because it got hard, and they're staring on the barrel of 2023, like, what am I going to do? NAR, National Association of Realtors, predicts between 30 and 40% of agents are going to exit the business this year. Some have already done it because the dues at many boards came due on December 31st. So we're already seeing that attrition rate of agents in the marketplace. So skill building and fundamentals are going to be super important for those agents to thrive in the upcoming year. And as a consumer or an investor, you're going to be looking for the best of the best. And this is what they call separation season. So a lot of agents that are skill building and sharpening their skills, those will be the ones that consumers are searching for and choosing. A lot of those rankings on Google are going to come into play in a massive way right now. Do you want a marginal agent? Do you want your friend as an agent? Or do you need an absolute shark that knows exactly what's going on in the marketplace that can get you the best possible deal with the best possible information? That's going to make a difference. So if you're an agent, it's time to level up on skills. And if you're a consumer, as you do your research, I find that most people in changing and challenging markets like this, they're going to look to hire the best negotiator and the most fundamentally sound agent, the one that's most competent and engaged within this business. So if you're an agent that's been working remotely for the last few years and not at the office and not skill building and not doing any of those things, this is a year where that is definitely in fashion. It's a change. So we do see people changing brokerages and looking for training or retraining. It's not going away. It's not a temporary thing, but it's a good thing. And in most markets, skilled agents that are fully engaged and knowledgeable, well, if they've been highly sought after, that won't change. How does this affect pricing? Well, I don't know. If you get a discount agent or someone who doesn't really know the neighbor of the house, but they were cheaper or they were a friend, and your property's up at $300,000, we'll just keep using that number. A skilled agent might be able to get you all for close to that 300, but an agent who has a cash and commission check in 6 months or lacks in skills, do you have the same confidence they're going to get you the same amount of money? That's a big thing in this market. And having the right agent's always going to matter in real estate, and that's going to matter in every other industry. And I bring this up a lot in this conversation today because it goes right back to the investors who I think are going to rule this market. And here's why. They're looking for a good return on their money. And it's not what you always think. It's not, an investor, they're going to lowball, they're going to offer half the price, and they're going to make 1 million offers, not buy anything. See, investors, they just want to make money. And investors realize the stock market has been super volatile for the last, little bit. And if you've got $500,000 or $1 million tied up in it, which a lot of people probably do, they're thinking, geez, one day it's 500, one day it's 400, whatever. And my Bitcoin, that was an issue. Thank God I didn't have any Bitcoin. But all of a sudden they're thinking, look, I can cash out of that. It's after the first of the year. I have no tax consequence for a year. And I could take that money and I could roll it into the number one investment over the last 100 years, which is real estate. It's not stocks, it's not bonds, it's not Bitcoin, it's not gold. It's been real estate for more than 100 years. Irrefutable, number one investment. So if you can remove, let's say, $500,000 from a portfolio of stocks and buy a couple of homes at about $250 each, and let's suppose that for that 500, you're getting $4,000 a month net rent after paying your property manager and expenses. It's $48,000 a year return on your investment. That's a really nice, nearly 10% return on your investment, where your stocks and bonds might be higher or lower, but are you getting that dividend? You still control the asset. Instead of a stock, you own a house, right? And then you have this extra 40, 50 grand in your pocket that you could continue to reinvest. You could put that back in the market or buy more property. But the investor, they're just looking for something that makes them money. And when you have a home that's paid for, it's really like an instant annuity. You own it, it's yours. You get money every month, that feels good. And you don't have to stare at the stock ticker anymore, because the only day that really matters in real estate is when you buy it, your acquisition cost, and then somewhere down the road when you eventually sell it. So even if prices soften, and I don't know that they will, but let's just suppose for a minute they do over the next year or so, and that $250,000 home becomes $225,000, as long as you're cashing $2,000 a month, does it really matter? Do you care? Because you can out-survive that by just waiting until there's such a time where the property value does go back to where you want it to be to make a profit on the sale. All the while, you're reducing that initial outlay and cost basis. If you put out $250,000 and you're netting $20,000 per year, in 5 years, your real investment is probably $150,000. There's room within this equation to make some money. My suspicion is over a 5 or 10 year horizon, that $250,000 property at some point is going to be worth more. Question is, will you want to sell it? Because once you start receiving that mailbox money, you may just want to keep it. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the remote work thing. And certainly most people have experienced some sort of remote work in the last 3 years. Here's where it's shifting. You see, most companies allowed their people to work remotely. Their best workers, their middle workers, and their most marginal workers. And this is getting interesting now, because as people are shifting to where they're working and wanting to work and wanting to live, something interesting is going on. You see, now that there's companies out there making profits, because there are companies making profits, they're looking to acquire top talent to get more market share in specific industries. And since they already have a program in place for people to work remotely, they can literally recruit anywhere in the world, whether it's cold weather, hot weather, tropical, whatever it offers. But let's just suppose that you're someplace where it's really cold in January and you'd love to live, I don't know, a place like Florida where there's no state tax, for instance. You can apply for a job with a company that already has proven remote work systems in place and relocate and find a home and a property where you'd rather live, where you could be looking out at an ocean or in a warmer climate or a jungle or whatever you're looking for. You may want to go rural. Go up in the mountains. As long as you have an internet connection, you probably can work. Now, with all that said, as companies now have a proven platform to hire people to work remotely, the talent pool just went from within 10 miles of the office to within, 20 miles on an airplane, 20 hours in an airplane. So they can really recruit from anywhere and you can work from anywhere. So the relocation thing, that if you're moving, you can go to the company for relocation fees to help you move from, a place where it's really, really cold to a place that's really warm, and have a job that you like in an industry that you love. And the win for the company is they're top grading talent right now. So a home with flex space in it or an office in it with a view and creature comforts is going to be at a premium. And it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But I see a big shift in the way that people are choosing to work and where they're choosing to work and the type of homes that they're buying. So this is a real thing. So if you own a property where this is available, that home may stand out among others that are currently on the market this year. If you're looking for an angle or an edge as a seller in a market that might be changing or a little bit off, a savvy agent is going to actually take that advantage that you have over the others and exploit it so that you can get top dollar for your property. And it's really interesting how this all plays out. So, if you're an agent or a person selling a property or looking to relocate as a worker, keep that in mind, that there's very few spaces that actually have a workspace that's comfortable long-term versus just working off the kitchen table for the next 4 years. I think people have suffered from that, and there's been some consequences, and there's some changes on the horizon for it. These strategies and these things are going to play out in the year ahead in a very interesting way, and these insights I want to continue to share with you now that we've relaunched back into this space. We've been grinding for the last year. We're refreshed. We're ready to go. If you've got questions about the real estate market, how it affects you, as a buyer, a seller, an investor, or someone who works in the industry, we're here to help. So drop us a line, subscribe, check in with us as often as you can, and we will make sure that we can get you the information you need. This is Ron Wysockarski for the Black Hole of Real Estate.